check this thing out. This is the new Hygear progressive linkage kit for the IGX and the Assaults. This thing should help transform this IGX into something closer to that Pro CC in terms of that smoothness over all the stutter bumps, along with that big, huge mogul compliance. With Andy Wenzlaff shock valving in this thing, I had it working incredibly well to where it was really good. It wasn't quite what the Pro CC with the Hygear linkage and the long tails is in my 650, but it was very close and it was acceptable and it worked incredibly well. I'm hoping this thing takes it to the next step. That said, this thing is just super cool. It's a little spooky. When I got it, I was super confused because I'm looking at it and I'm like, thinking that this piece here had to replace this rocker setup. And I'm like, how is this? Their logo's upside down, and I was all confused. So I sent Andy a message and I said, have you seen pictures of this thing installed yet or anything? And he's like, nope, hang on, let me reach out and get some. So he's like, hey, you better be sitting down because we were way off. Andy and I went back and forth trying to figure out which way it went and all that. So this whole contraption goes this way. So it makes a lot more sense when you flip it around. I thought maybe it was assembled a little upside down for shipping or something, but no, this is the way it's supposed to go. So when you get the kit, it should come this way with your logos and everything assembled in this fashion. So essentially what you have here is new billet link rods that replace this stamped steel wire contraption here from the factory. I did bend one side of this, the other side has a slight bend in it. I believe that happened when the other rails had all their issues and it tore itself apart in a skid and all that. So it's nice to replace those with these big beefy billet pieces. These go down here. This is essentially a threaded sleeve. So it's almost similar to like your cross rails in here where you have a bolt on each side. You need to use this piece. You can't reuse the factory bolt simply because the factory bolt head and the nylock nut are too thick and they will end up hitting on these new billet rods. So when you take this whole link rod system out, you insert this sleeve in here where your old bushing and everything went, and then you thread these in on either side and then put the link rods on. That way you have ample clearance to get your Allen bit in here and tighten these button head bolts up. And then these button heads obviously clear the billet link rods with no issue. So then that goes down in there like that, like so. Your shock and bushing and everything bolt back in up here. So this just kind of braces and ties everything in because now you're putting a lot of force down through here. So bolt all that in up top, bolt these in down the bottom, and you're pretty much set. Sounds very easy when we describe it and talk about it that way. I believe in traditional IGX fashion, this will all be slightly tricky to get assembled and hold in hand, like using two hands and holding this and holding that and getting the bolt and everything through. We're gonna find out here in a minute. So some of you are probably noticing that these rails are black and this sled originally had orange rails. The old skid tore itself apart over time and some shock issues in the past, and just, it tore itself to pieces. So I'm gonna flash into the reassembly of this skid and like the breakdown of the other one and kind of getting it to this point here. I've added some extra bracing and cross shafts and stuff to kind of stiffen this whole skid up because the IGX does move around quite a bit. Without these cross braces, there's not really a whole lot going on back here. And I even did bend one of my rails. They're a 1/4 inch off now. Like I said, that other skid just trashed itself. It did not like the abuse I threw at it, so I'm trying to improve things a little bit. These are SKS rails with less cutouts. They are not exactly a direct replacement. The idler mounts and stuff are different. Luckily, the rails I got came with all of that stuff. You can't fit the factory Assault brace on here because the extrusion profile is a little bit different. But I got these very cheap off of eBay. They were also bent. I was able to heat them and straighten them. And now with everything all braced up together, it should be good to go. So we're gonna flash into all that process of swapping everything over and getting it to how it sits now. And then we'll pick this up with the Hygear linkage install, get it in the sled, and then this weekend I'm going riding and testing, and you can look for a ride review video coming out hopefully soon. I've got a ton of stuff going on in the shop here, new parts, stuff from Andy, stuff from Devin at Indy Specialties. It's just, there's a lot going on right now, so the videos are gonna hopefully fly out and come out every couple days. Yeah, let's just get into it. Enough rambling. The main reason for this rail swappage is that last year this axle loosened up somehow along the way and it wore into the rails really bad and kind of locked everything into one position, which fortunately the track had stretched and all that, and it was lined up, it just rotated and got crooked in here and wore the living shit out of the rail. Time to replace and fix these. It also trashed the axle. For now, we're going back to, where the hell did I put it? Stock wheel setup. That's from the 650 because the Assault 4-wheel kit is in the 650. So that will go on to get by. I put these in many sleds, these TKI axles, and never had any loosen up. I'm assuming that this one loosened up when it took a ton of force from when this bolt sheared at some point somehow. So that bolt at one time sheared. The arm dropped down, wore on the rail down there, all messed up. So this whole skid last year kind of wore itself apart. I think a lot of that was from when the previous place that had valved the shocks had the metal in it and it got all bound up and messed up. I think it put a lot of force on things that shouldn't have forces on them when this shock wouldn't move. I think that broke a lot of stuff. So I think I'm kind of just playing catch up, finally getting to dealing with all this stuff. Before this one goes in, I want to go ahead and add, I've got a bunch of these leftover Skidoo cross rail braces. They just sit in here. Added this one here. This is an Ice Age anti-stab kit from an old 600R Skidoo. Ice chews these things all up, all to hell on the trail, so that's why it is kind of worn out. But that's in here at the back. I've cycled the suspension with the torsions off. The adjustment blocks do clear the wheel and everything with this all lined up, so that's all good there. You can go ahead and add another one right here in the middle. And then I'm going to add the second one, or third, I guess, right? Back here in this hole to just kind of try to stiffen this whole skid up as much as I can to stop that flexing and these things just tearing itself apart. Old linkage is out. I want to clarify there are no installation instructions for that kit yet. I've seen a picture, seen two pictures of how it installs. I got no torque specs, none of that, which is not a problem. I'm completely fine with that. I'm pretty good about tight is tight, too tight, whatever. I don't have any of that information to give you, but I'm just going to go along and explain everything as I'm doing it. What I believe is that everything along with this factory linkage rod setup, I don't need anymore. So the bolt, the washers, this has some Mainway Solutions stuff in it that is not being used anymore. Yeah, so this has a bolt down here. That goes on that. Okay, now let's do this number bolt. That into there. I don't know for sure. Okay, that fell on the ground. All right. I may seem a little bit on the excited side, or like I'm kind of moving really quick. Oh wow, look how bent this thing is. I don't know how well that will come out, but the bolt alignment clearly ain't it. You can probably see the bend in that one there. So it's nice to get this out because, like I said, that skid in stock form did not like the abuse I put it through. And I know on the video footage sometimes I'll be talking about like, oh man, that's a big hole, or these trails are really rough, and they don't really look it. It's been very difficult to get the GoPro to have really good terrain definition. So yeah, a lot of those stuff when I say this is really rough is like 18-inch mogul choppy type stuff. Uh-oh, I'm getting a phone call. Who dis? Waterbury. Yeah, they're gonna have to leave a message. So cool, pumped to get this thing out of here. So I'm gonna run this through a sweep after without the torsion springs and kind of feel and see the change. Essentially, you're moving your linkage rod pickup point from here, which is this mount here, up and over a little bit, which is changing the motion ratio of how this skid progresses through its action. On the Pro CC one, as it compresses, the way I understand it from my knowledge and looking at it is that it reduces leverage a lot when it gets towards the bottom. So it takes a ton of force to really continue that last several inches of the stroke, which what makes it feel very bottomless, right? Because it takes just a ton of momentum to really get those last few inches out of it. I believe this is probably moving forward with that same theory. I can't say for sure. I haven't really had any discussions. It was one of those things where it was like, hey, this kit is out, would you like to try one? And I said, yup. So here we are. I'm gonna try to finagle this together as best I can. I'm gonna separate the link rods from this upper brace here and install the brace pretty much loosely with this bolt in the top, and then get this lower setup, sleeve, button head bolt all done and tight in here. I'll use Loctite on those, and then move on to the link rods and the shock. Got our upper brace and link rod relocation bracket in. You can see in here we have the little sleeve. It's threaded on both sides, so you got to put these 6mm Allen head button bolts in, or button head with 6mm Allen bit. Regular old 3/8 ratchet with a 6mm Allen. Get right in there. You got to move your spring up just a little bit, but you got plenty of room to get in there and tighten those things up. Again, since this is not necessarily a prototype kit, but early release, I don't exactly have the torque specs on that. I just put blue Loctite on, tightened them up really good. Should be good to go. Next up is the link rods and the shock. Hopefully it all goes together relatively easily. It is tricky, holding the pivoting arm that moves in two spots and the shock and this thing that pivots around. And it's a little tricky, but it's not terrible. So let's get after it. When you're at this point of putting the link rods and the shocks in, on these link rods, you do have a little machined bushing here that goes in this end. So just be careful, make sure you don't lose those. Something to be aware of. There is a nice bushing in here. Gonna do a quick overview on your sizes for bolts and stuff. Up top, you have a 15mm nut, 13mm head on the bolt. Same thing here on your linkage rods. So this is your new shock bolt up here. Link rods are the same, 15mm nut, 13mm head. Down here on the bottom of the link rod where it goes through the shock and the rocker arm, this big nut on the back side is a 15/16 wrench or socket or whatever you want to fit on here. And then your bolt is an 8mm Allen head, just like the factory one. Tricky to keep it in line, but right about there it starts to get a lot stiffer than the stock one did. Yeah. But still, it's hard because I can't keep this perfectly in line, But the fact that when I get to this point down here, it starts to walk around a lot more. It doesn't want to go straight, means that it is getting way stiffer there because it's easier to move it down here. Yeah. This kit is sweet. The install is super easy. The Pro CC one is a little intricate and a little bit more difficult than this one. This thing, I think, even with film time and I'm filming these type of things where I'm explaining stuff, I think I had just under an hour putting this whole kit in, which is awesome, right? Really straightforward. You saw the process that I went through. I did the front here first and then did the shock up top. and then put a ratchet strap from the shock bolt here to the front torque arm mount here, and just kind of pulled and compressed the shock a little bit to line the link rods up, put the bolt through, tightened everything, and that's really it. I would imagine you can probably pull this off in the machine. It will obviously be a little bit trickier working around up in here, but on the IGX, I always prefer to just yank the skid out because it takes almost no time at all. Usually been able to get away without even touching my track tension on the IGX, so I always prefer to just pull the skid out and get to it. I checked on the compression stroke. Everything clears all these extra brace rods I put in, so we're all good to go there. Also switched over, and I'm running these HD torsion spring mounts from APM Fabrication, or I think it might be Fabrication APM. Either way, I'm going to link his store in the description, or I'll do a pinned comment with a link to these things. You do lose that ability to pull the spring out after you undo that little pin, but I've had those cotter pins bending and getting all messed up all the time. I don't mind sacrificing that little ease of pulling the spring out for this HD mount. It's a really rugged nylon. It's this billet aluminum machine piece here, and then the diameter where this actual aluminum mounts to the rail is 1/8 of an inch bigger in diameter, so you get a little bit more surface area to work with and keep from bending and breaking the mount. There's been a few reports online recently of the mounts breaking on the Polaris sleds, so getting ahead of that, throwing these bad boys on along with obviously this Hygear linkage. Now it's time to go ahead, throw this skid back in the sled, and move on to the rest of the projects. Bonk. Oh. We're not gonna worry about that. Sometimes I can get lucky and ram these home first try. Let's see. Oh, come on, you're right there. Yeah. Hard part, when you grab wheels, they spin like a glove. You love to see that right there, I tell you what. Ow! Gotcha, bitch. Yeah, lower it down, throw the back in, tension the track. Another job done. Just doing some very accurate push tests in the shop here. This thing does respond very similarly to the Pro CC linkage now, where once you get to a certain point, it gets very stiff and very hard to continue through that travel. Not stiff in a way that it's like, oh, you're hitting a brick wall. It just, you can tell that there is a resistance change there that is going to provide that bottomless feeling that we're all looking for. So that's a decent little frame job there, you know? IGX skid is back in, SKS rails, Fabrication APM, HD torsion spring mounts, and the Hygear linkage, right? So this thing should be all set to go for this weekend. I've got a bunch of other stuff to finish up before we go to a radar run and then trail riding. If you see things in the background that I haven't talked about yet, you didn't see those. Videos are coming soon. A lot of different shop stuff coming out for the Assault build, the 650 build, just thing after thing after thing, really cool stuff that I'm excited about. Thank you to everyone who has reached out and commented on the videos and given me ideas, and the companies and partners that have reached out and sent me stuff and are working with me on getting me cool things to test and ride and try, to give you guys not only content, but reviews and like real information on what this stuff does and how it feels and what it exactly changes. So with this linkage, right, I'm not changing any of the shock valving. I wasn't instructed to. I don't know if that is a requirement in the future or anything like that. Like I said, this is a relatively early release on this, so leaving all the shocks the same, all the positions the same, the torsion springs the same. We're gonna go out and just try it and see how it reacts and how it feels, and all the feedback as I try to do my best is gonna be as honest as possible. There isn't really any point in giving you guys like, you know, just fluff, right? You want what's true and what's honest, so that's what I'm trying to do my best to provide you with. Last thing real quick before I wrap this video up, along with bringing you guys honest information, I want to be upfront about everything. I did not get given this kit. I bought this kit, I had the opportunity, it was presented to me as, hey, do you want this kit to try out early? Still have to pay for it. So I've paid for this kit. We're gonna find out if it works as well as we hope it will. That said, I'm gonna wrap this video up here and continue on with the rest of the stuff that I have to get done in the next 48 hours.